In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host from deep in the heart of Texas, Mr. Dustin Melbardis. How you doing, sir?
Yeehaw! Good evening, Russell. How are you?
All right. And from the Golden State, from the San Francisco Bay Area, special guest. Haven't been too long since we've heard from her. She's back. Miss Crystal Faith, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Paris. It's a city of love. It's a romantic setting. What's a romantic setting in a movie that you wish you could take your special person or somebody special to you and go on a romantic getaway? Crystal.
My absolute favorite part of Italy is Venice. And when I was there last, I had an idea of starting this book of Bloody Marys and rating the places that I get a Bloody Mary. And so I started in Venice. That is not a drink that they typically do there. So I would say it was one of the worst I've ever had, but it was the first entry into my Bloody Mary book. So it is a very special place.
Okay, so Venice, that is a super charming place. I had a cousin who fell in the canal and she couldn't get out. Like, it's like really slimy and sludgy, and like, so help had to be retrieved to get her out of the canal. So if you go, don't fall in.
Hey, Dustin, Russell, that's good advice.
Yeah, it is. Dustin, how about you? What's a romantic spot that you've seen in a movie that makes you go, man, I'd like to get away there with somebody special?
I think a lot of movie characters have this idea of, you know what the romantic getaway is? It's out to a cabin in the woods. And it's not from the movie A Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, thank goodness.
Russell, you know where I'm from. I'm from the mountains, man. And so for me, all of these movies and the settings, you know, whether it's like the mountains in Northern California or the Pacific Northwest, you know, or the Appalachians, like where we're from, just being out in the uncharted wilderness, there is an allure there. And half the time, maybe more than half the time, it ends up in, oh no, there's something scary about to happen. But don't all these horror movies start with like a romantic tryst out in the woods? Well, I like the woods. I like the wilderness. I'm an outdoor boy.
I definitely think that's a horror movie start.
It's a great
Absolutely. Start. So you want like the first 1/3 of the movie.
That's what I want. Yeah. I want a compilation of the first 1/3 of all the horror movies where it's just a nice time with Ouija boards and crackling campfires.
So Paris is one of my favorite places that I visited. And I can also recommend Berlin, Chicago. Some of these are great places that I recommend. One that I've not done, though, that I've seen in a movie is The Man with the Golden Gun. It's a campy, fun Bond movie, but the location in Vietnam and Scaramanga's Island is Ha Long Bay, and it is gorgeous. I had the fortunate, I worked on a project to design a facility in Ha Long Bay, and I kind of became enamored with it there. I would love to travel there someday, and I think it'd be a lot of fun. So beautiful, beautiful setting. It's also in Tomorrow Never Dies there, Dustin, which we covered. So
that's right.
Like the boats, like where the sailboats are going through and all those like islands are sticking out of the water and they look really vertical. Beautiful sunsets and stuff. That's my pick.
You got to design a project out there?
Yes.
That's sick. I will tell you, Russell, I don't know if I've told you before, but I've actually been to a James Bond location. Do you remember what it was?
Fort Knox, because he went there once.
I have been near Fort Knox, but no, I went to Thunderball Cave in the Bahamas.
Very cool. Oh, that is okay. That's more exotic than Kentucky. So.
Yes, it is. Sorry, Lizzie. Staniel K. So I've been there, and you know, I think Thunderball has the introduction of a musical theme that they come back to a lot of times. It's not one of my favorites, but just being able to go there, I like that memory.
That's another great location. Bond movies are full of great travel destinations. Now, Crystal, what's the last movie you saw?
Yeah, I'm lucky to go to movies about every week, and I went to see the cartoon Dog Man with my toddler, And it's where a dog's head is placed on a man's body, and then the dog becomes like the best cop in the world. So there's a lot going on. Pete Davidson actually plays the bad guy, and he is a cat. I'm not a huge Pete Davidson fan, and I actually think his voice isn't unique enough to really like hold on to like this is like a super villain. But as cartoon goes, it was fair. It wasn't amazing. I think after like Toy Story, cartoons are so strong now that it takes a lot to really, make me think that it's amazing. But I would say it was fair.
All right, Dustin, how about you? What's the last movie you saw?
My friend was watching the TV show Shameless, and that show has gone on for way more seasons than I thought. But it has William H. Macy as a character in it, and I was saying that show really, really is a highlight of his career. He's had a long career in films, and so I decided to pop Pleasantville in.
I thought you were going the Fargo route when you said William H. Macy at first, but I've never actually seen Pleasantville. It seems appealing, and I'd like to do that movie someday, but I've not seen that one.
I'll give it a better than fair.
Okay, well that is a fair thing to say. So the last movie I saw. Get this: there was a movie where there was a cop and a dog, and they sewed the dog of a man on the head. And wait a minute, I just saw the same movie that Crystal just explained as well.
Really?
I did. I did, and I had a lot of fun. Now this is a series of books my son really enjoys. He's 5. He likes Dave Pilkey. He's the same guy who wrote Captain Underpants, and he has enjoyed all these books. And I'll be honest with you, I get a great time watching him enjoy all this stuff. It was a sweeter movie than I expected. They kind of made the villain a little bit. They put a little aha moment on them. They didn't keep him the world's most evilest cat, as his title is. So I liked it. It was fun. I'm not sure they left themselves a lot of room to come back and do this again because they made it feel all nice at the end. So what movie are we going to cover today, Dustin?
From 2011, Midnight in Paris.
All right. Wow. Owen Wilson.
Hit him with the wow. Wow.
Rachel McAdams, Kurt Fuller,
wow.
Mimi Kennedy,
wow.
Michael Sheen are some of the stars. There's also a lot of fun cameos in this one. We'll get into that here later. Comes out in 2011, budgeted for $17 million. It grosses $56 million domestically, $151 million globally. So this is a bigger hit globally. Woody Allen's first film to gross over 100 million worldwide. And as of 2016, it is Allen's highest grossing film ever. So, I mean, and he's quite accomplished. So that's a very impressive thing. It places at number 59 in the box office. It comes in behind The Lincoln Lawyer. Good movie. And it comes in just ahead of Friends with Benefits. I can't recommend that one. But Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 was the number 1 movie from that year. IMDb gives Midnight in Paris a 7.6. Critics of Rotten Tomatoes love it way more. They give it a 93%. And the audience score is somewhere in between at an 83%. It is an Academy Award winner for Best Original Screenplay. We are here in Oscar season, so hence we have an Oscar winner on our hands here.
Wow.
It is for Woody Allen. I don't. It's his 4th time winning. I don't know why he is so good at writing the screenplays.
Yeah, you're good at this.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
A transformation right in front of our eyes.
So
whoa.
So Woody Allen does his 4th Oscar for Best Original Screenplay here. It also gets nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Art Direction. It's a Golden Globes winner for Best Screenplay, Golden Globes nominee for Best Motion Picture, Best Director, Woody Allen, Best Actor for Owen Wilson, Grammy Award winner for Compilation Soundtrack, which is a great soundtrack. Writers Guild of America Award winner for Woody Allen. Alliance of Women Film Journalists winner, which I thought was a strange award, but it won Best Screenplay for that, and Screen Actors Guild nominee as well for Best Outstanding Performance by a whole cast in a motion picture. The critics liked this movie, to say the least. Crystal, had you seen this movie, and did you like it?
Yeah, this is one of my top 3 movies. I love it. I love the dialogue, the imagery, the imagination, the casting, the acting, the score. I am impressed and obsessed.
All right. So when did you first come to it, and how did it take you by storm the first time?
I definitely watched it in theaters. I can't say I'm a huge Woody Allen fan just in general, but I thought that this movie was so well done and well rounded. It's just, perfect cinema. Owen Wilson is typically Owen Wilson, so I think you kind of know what you're going to get with that.
Yeah.
But I thought I would enjoy it, and I definitely did.
Have you viewed it differently over the years, coming back to it now?
I think any good movie is going to hit you differently at different points of life, especially if you've grown as a person. And so back then, I wasn't married, I didn't have children, and I was kind of in that same part of life where you're looking at, like, okay, do you want to get married? What do you want to do with your life? And they're kind of figuring that out as well. So I was there. And now looking back, I'm even more nostalgic for that time and that era and also of Paris. So I think it actually gets better with age.
I like that you said nostalgic. That's a big part of what this movie, a theme for this movie. Dustin, how about you? Had you seen Midnight in Paris before?
Maybe I was aware of it. I did know it was Woody Allen. I knew nothing else. I got to go into this completely blind. I had no preparation for the show. The only thing I wanted to do was make sure I got the year right. But I did watch it for the first time last night, just straight through. Really dug it. Think it was 17 minutes in that you get your first, oh, check this out. Then it's about an hour in that you get it a little bit more. And so at this point, I'm going, we are in the middle of something that I was going to say unprecedented. It does not surprise me that it received the Oscar for my favorite Oscar, the Best Original Screenplay. It does not surprise me at all because it's a fun take. This story is fresh, and I thought that was cool. All of the stuff about like the history of who we encounter here was something I could not have prepared for. And I got to say, the thing that I think will keep it fresh is that I don't think it really requires that you are some type of artist historian to understand the impact of these early 20th century people. So it was something that as I'm watching it, I did not feel burdened by like the amount of info you might have about, these famous people in history. So it was a fresh take and a good watch.
Mm-hmm. And as I alluded to, I had seen this one before. I sought it out when it got its Oscar nomination, and I greatly exceeded my expectations. It didn't take very long for me to sit there and go like, oh, wow, this got nominated for an Oscar. I didn't realize movies were this, like, yeah, I didn't think this could happen. Like this seems like it's not sad and depressing enough to get nominated for an Oscar, but it was incredibly fun. And I really thought it was really creative. I got done with it and I wanted to talk about it. And unfortunately, most of the people around me just hadn't seen it at all. I was like, have you seen Midnight in Paris? And I was like, no. So I'm excited to be able to talk to people who have seen it tonight and somebody who loves it with Crystal. This is going to be a blast because it is fun. I love Paris too, by the way. So, I mean, the setting gets me and the writing gets me. And I do like Woody Allen's writing, but I have to admit, I might actually even like Owen Wilson in the Woody Allen role better than I like Woody Allen doing his thing. I like Owen Wilson a lot too. So this is a lot of things that I like coming together here. So, and I like modern art, and this might not be the history point where I would travel back to, but boy, it sure is fun. We are going to spoil this movie. We will be back after these messages. And if you have not seen Midnight in Paris, you're going to want to check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
All right, we are back. This is your final warning. There will be spoilers that lie ahead. Dustin, for those who haven't seen Midnight in Paris, since 2011, do you want to refresh people's memories?
Gil and Inez are tagging along with her parents in Paris. It's a not-so-young relationship, and plans for the future are up for debate. Inez is quick to criticize Gil's artistic pursuits and lofty way of romanticizing the world. Their vacationship is further strained by the arrival of Inez's friends, Carol and John, who Gil doesn't see eye to eye with. Activities are pushed through with little enjoyment until the decision to skip late-night dancing leads Gil down the streets of Paris until midnight strikes. A Rolls-Royce or some other old car with young partiers picks him up, and Gil is thrust into the 1920s to chat and learn from some of the 20th century's greatest artists. As he enters and leaves the past and the present, we see how he learns from his visits to the more romantic times, and how this world constructed in the present is shaky at best. They encounter Zelda Fitzgerald about to jump in the river before Salvador Dali convinces him to sit down and share a chat with the other surrealists. While the father of his fiancée hires a private detective to follow him around, Gil escapes with T.S. Eliot and learns about Hemingway and Adriana running off to Africa. Yes, these things happen in little 5-minute spurts. Gil finds a diary written by Adriana that includes his own name and the way she feels about him, then squirms away from getting caught trying to visit the past. The very next visit, he makes the leap with Adriana as a horse-drawn carriage pulls up, and the Belle Epoque manifests to the two travelers, 1890s or so. Our revelation is that the greatest artists of this time feel the same way as pedantic Paul described. They have the golden age fallacy too, that things were better before you were born. Adriana doesn't want to leave, but it helps Gil realize that his illusion of living in the past is holding him back as a writer, while Hemingway helps him realize his fiancée is having an affair. Quicker than a $5 cab ride, Gil decides to walk away from his frankly upsetting engagement, by chance running into the street vendor late at night in Paris as the rain begins to fall on a lovely evening.
In the rain. He loves the rain.
Yeah, I guess, the prettiest a city can be is in the rain, I suppose.
I feel like he would get along very well with Shirley Manson from Garbage because he is only happy when it rains. So
yeah, great. Only garbage reference you get today.
I don't know if I'll be able to work another one in there. That sounds like a challenge. But Crystal, we have a love story, we have a comedy, we have fantasy, which is perhaps unexpected, and it's all set here in Paris. Tell us here, when you're watching this movie, this is not your typical maybe rom-com sort of thing. What makes this so different than what you might normally expect from this genre?
That's a difficult question. For me, I felt like the writing is so quick and precise. You know exactly who every character is really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like within a first couple sentences, you realize Gil is this optimistic, very romantic. He's a dreamer. And his fiance, she's a pessimist and everything kind of sucks in a way. And then her father and mother kind of are very similar in her way. And they don't really like Gil. And all of this comes like within the first couple minutes. So I love that this is a screenshot. These are who these people are. And you're just following along. And it doesn't take much work from the viewer. And it's almost you're seeing all the surroundings and the beauty because everything's kind of handed to you on a silver platter. And I love that.
It doesn't condescend. It doesn't have to spell it out for you. Like you said, it's very clear within their interactions.
Yeah. And it's done in a very like comical, fun way. So it's not like, hey, you're an idiot watching it. Like this is what you get. Like it's so fun. Like you want to know more of all the characters.
I think it helps that Martin Sheen and Rachel McAdams are thoroughly dislikable in this movie, but they are very, very likable characters. And most of their like you like these kind of people, like these personalities. If you see them off screen, they're both very enjoyable. So in a way, they get you to laugh at these characters. I think Rachel McAdams is excellent at this in Mean Girls as well, like where she makes this character that is awful, but it's so on purpose. It's like it's funny, like it feels like a joke. It's not just ugh, she's awful, get rid of her. It's awful in a funny. I'm very aware I'm watching a comedy sort of thing, and that's a really nice balance to hit. They didn't hit that like I think with wrong casting, that could have gone badly, but I think that is brilliant in terms of that dynamic that they get there. So, and they go back and they can mine gold from that multiple times. And the parents who are in Paris, the cultural mecca, it's an amazing place, and they're not really appreciating it. They keep sitting there regretting not being back in America. They have this certain kind of thing. It's like, I didn't really like that beef bourguignon like kind of thing, and I didn't really like this it's better in Texas kind of thing, kind of attitude. So it was a lot of fun to see them also kind of not appreciating where they are, and it was so obvious that the movie is such a love letter to Paris.
Well, they are there for some kind of business merger. The parents,
they are.
So it wasn't a trip to Paris that there was a desire to drink the city in. The only person that wants to is Gil. And thank goodness that we are shown that so early, that this is the kind of person that he is. I agree with Rachel McAdams does a great job playing this type of character. I think it's nice to be able to think about those people in your life who might be like this. Whether you want to use terms like high maintenance, or you want to use terms like overly dramatic, or, call the hotel doctor. Now call the hotel inspector. Call the hotel detective. All hands on deck for me. And to be so outwardly putting this attention on Paul, and Carol's in the background, not helping anything in that sense. But yeah, with Michael Sheen's character too, I think we all know those friends. I can be a little bit of that friend, maybe a little too pedantic, the well actually kind of guy. The idea of a private museum tour with that guy is enough to make anybody blow their brains out. That was written well and performed well. That I thought it was cool to be able to make that connection. And we all have those social interactions where you really enjoy your closest buds, and you really like joining for dinner with 6 people, but it's like that 7th person invited, like, kind of can't stand them for one thing or the other. And I think when a director or when a movie maker can understand that you can give your audience the hints of what kind of person they are, that you're kind of guided towards Gil. You're provided enough of a reason to follow Gil along and root for him.
Yeah. I mean, these parents and Inez, and certainly Martin Sheen's character Paul,
Michael Sheen.
are just
Michael Sheen.
Thank you. Martin Sheen's a whole other actor. Michael Sheen's character.
You said it earlier, and I was like,
no.
I'll correct it later.
No, it has to be painful mistakes.
It happens.
Thank you. Martin Sheen is a real person, but anyway, Michael Sheen is they're also deliciously terrible. They set up this perfect escape from it so well. So it makes it's like going into a small room. I like to say it's like compress and release. Paris is pretty magical. This movie opens up in an amazing travelogue. It might even seem a little corny. Like you could get something like this out of Valentine's Day, Dustin, which I know you had a hard time with that movie, but like it's a beautiful set of scenery here at the beginning to kick us into gear. And where are you going to go? How can you improve from that? Well, you put them around these people you don't want to spend time with. They ruin this otherwise awesome place. They take the magic away from it. And then at midnight, this old-timey car rolls up and he gets in, and all of a sudden you're around all these vibrant people who are passionate about what they do. They're intelligent. They're not so shallow. Like Inez and her crew and Paul are just so, they may be intelligent, but they're not interesting and passionate and excited about what they're doing. And so you're in this other time. The whole color filter changes. I'm not going to be as dramatic as saying Dorothy has stepped into Munchkin land and now it's all color all of a sudden. But in essence, it is a bit of magic like that. That's the fantasy part of this that puts a big smile on my face. It's like walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and that's done not through depicting of the environments like Oz or Willy Wonka does. It's done through the characters that are put around them, and it feels really, like I said, that's where the magic is, and magic's fun.
Well, speaking of the magic, Crystal, I wanted to ask you. This is something where I could see somebody writing a screenplay or writing a script where they're like, "Oh, our artist in Paris finds these memoirs and reads them and like sees vignettes maybe in his mind or reads these accounts, and that's how he learns about his self and his dreams." But I think the idea that this is magic, that this is unexplained as to what this transporting is, I think that really elevates this movie to something so much more.
Yeah, if it was just like a dream sequence where he is creating everything in his head, then he's ultimately controlling every other person that's in the room. But being able to transport him to a different time, but it's not actually in his head, everyone else has a say as well. So when he's talking to them, they're going to talk back as themselves. And so he has no idea what's actually going to happen. And that
Hmm.
means the audience doesn't know either. That makes it just so fresh. And I love that aspect. It's not just him in his head thinking, oh, wow, I'd really like to go back there. He gets to go back and also learns a ton of life lessons along the way.
It's like when the
Yeah.
kids in Narnia are excited to go back into the wardrobe. Like, it's like, I gotta go back, I gotta go back. I even love that he tries to take Inez with him, and she's such a buzzkill. She's like, this isn't fun. I don't like this. Like, will you just sit here all you want to? I'm gonna
Well,
go have some fun.
she was really tired after her massage. So, I mean,
Yeah.
she had to get back. She had to get back to read a book. I mean, duh.
I appreciate the way that you just described it as, these people are not under his control. He's getting this incredible. There's no way you could ask for better like life advice from the best artists of that time, and it's really like, surprising to me that I was interested even with just the short amount of time that we had with each of these figures, that they each had these impacts. And here's the other thing. I'm no like literature head. I have I read for pleasure occasionally, but the old classics, the canon you read in high school, I learned my lessons and I moved on. I don't hold some of these authors in like incredibly high regard. Shame on me. But I didn't feel like I needed to know. Oh, that is such a Fitzgerald thing to say, or that is such a T.S. Eliot thing. You are given just enough from the performances to treasure just a little bit of time that you have.
For those who are literary heads, the dialogue is, you don't have to appreciate the movie at that level, but if you do, and this is just from reading the homework and seeing the references, and I am also not claiming to be the most versed literature head, but it's there. And that's another level of enjoyment for those who can go there. And I like that you said, Dustin, it's, if you want the joke, it's there. There's so much here for you at the buffet. If that's not your dish that brought you here and that's not what your favorite thing is, that's fine. You're going to have a great meal anyway. And
Well, it's a movable feast, as Hemingway said.
yes. And the characters are so colorful. I love the Hemingway character. I like the Fitzgeralds. They're fun. I really love Gertrude Stein. I mean, I like Kathy Bates a lot, so anything that she's in is probably going to be a hit for me. I mean, they did a brilliant job of hiding all these people lower in the casting, so you didn't know they were coming.
I really breathed a sigh of relief when the manuscript he drops off to Gertrude Stein is still with her and she read it. Because when it comes to time traveling or when it comes to an uncertain amount of magic or whatever this is, there was no way of knowing whether he'd go back to the same place or whether he'd be meeting the same people. And so the idea that this 1920s version of the world has been touched by Gil and he interacts with them in a way that has permanence for this movie, that really cradled me and made me feel comforted. Like, I don't have to guess. He really is just going back every night to this place and they remember him and they like him. So that was another way that this was just, it stayed bright and it didn't lead you down the path of, well, what bad is going to happen? What's the bad thing that's going to happen? Instead, you're kind of along for the ride. Well, what's next?
I love how he keeps leaving again, you keep getting these tastes of how bad his world is. Again, Paris, they don't shoot it with sad filters. It's not like he's having a terrible time. He's just furniture shopping with people you'd rather not go furniture shopping with. I mean, there are worse things in the world. He's not in the seventh realm of hell here, but it just makes the adventure that much more adventuresome. Honestly, like you said, I like some of the stuff that, like, Paul is one of these people who's just trying to look smart. He's not excited about it. He's just out to make himself, I want to see it's an arrogance. I want to show everybody how smart I am. It's not, I really like this Monet painting. I want to look cool to everybody here. I want to seem like I'm the smartest guy in the room. And we've known people like that. I've had teachers like that. And it's so disingenuous. It is really, bah. It's just, it's an academic goober. And when you have that around you, and it's really fun to see them be the butt of the joke. So he picks these characters and he uses them as a punching bag over and over and over again. And they don't really get their comeuppance. Like, they don't just have like something terrible happen. It's just, that's not a party you as the audience or Gil ultimately wants to be part of. He'd rather find that cool chick who likes Cole Porter records. And gosh, what a nice way to end this movie. So, I mean, it also ends so perfectly too. He gets his walk in the rain, and it's just light. It's not. It never really gets real heavy. He doesn't have this dramatic come to Jesus moment that a lot of, I would say, typical rom-coms are going to put you through, where there's some great miscommunication where he's got to win her back or whatever. He doesn't actually get Marion Cotillard's character. That in itself is really different. He gets self-actualization that says, I'm not really happy. I really do. I want to be supported in what I want to do that makes me happy. I'm not happy with my relationship. This person doesn't appreciate me for who I am. She appreciates me for a paycheck and doesn't want to change anything, and doesn't really, appreciate the things that make me happy. It's this making me happy. So I think it's it cross-cuts so many genres so beautifully. I think that's one of the things that makes it so unique.
There's not too many movies that are this complete in they have a little bit of everything.
The absence of in your face, oh, the lesson was just learned, or a blow up to represent the end of the relationship. Or, I mean, I think we have extremely quick goodbyes in this movie, or no goodbyes at all. When we are introduced to a new author or artist, we get to enjoy it. There was no longing goodbye to the last one. And with our sort of primary interest here, so with Adriana, we learn that she, in the 20s, wants to go back to the Belle Epoque. And once they realize it, it's like, okay, well, goodbye then. And here they go. And so I think that maybe the easy thing to do would be to focus like on the drama of a passionate goodbye, or the drama of an angry fight that leads to a blow up that this movie could have ended with. Instead, you have the result of that leaving the engagement. I'm staying in Paris is a joke, a very welcome kind of silly joke, which was, oh, by the way, I had someone follow him. Well, what happened? Where did he go? I don't know. He disappeared. And then you see that he's in some castle being chased by guards. The inspector, or sorry, the private detective. So the casualness of ending these relationships or ending these scenes and moving on to, it is Gil's story. I think that is what is so unique.
One of the cool things that I found when reading this was Woody Allen has been around for so long. He's a bit of an institution as a writer, 4-time Oscar winner for screenplay, best screenplay. Rachel McAdams said when he called her and propositioned the role to her, he said it would be a lot more interesting to play this character. And you don't want to go around your whole life playing nice, beautiful girls. You got to play some mean girl parts, which again, she was in Mean Girls. I guess he did miss this, but despite that, she had already done, this kind of thing in Mean Girls early on in her career. She had gotten away from that. And so she's not Miss Wedding Crashers with Owen Wilson here. This is a very different side of Rachel McAdams. Tom Hiddleston was also super excited. He said he received a letter with a 15-page script offering him the role, and it was 3 sentences long with the actual message to him. It says, "Dear Tom, I'm making a movie in Paris this summer. I've attached some pages for you to read." And with those 15 pages of script, it had the 3 sentences long message, and he framed that letter, and it's hanging up in his office. Marion Cotillard got a call from him, and they talked for about an hour, and she just got off the phone excited for, oh my God, I've been talking to Woody Allen, and I'm going to be in a Woody Allen movie. That was Woody Allen's voice. He actually sounds like that on the phone. It happens. If you look at his movies, Woody Allen movies, they're usually not made for a lot of money. He had a small budget. I've heard him say this before. He doesn't want the studios to tell him what to do. The actors always respond to him because there's an integrity in his work. People are excited and want to work for him. So oftentimes he'll get really good actors, the people who he wants to work with. Again, not demanding top budget dollar. Woody doesn't want his money to be marketed that heavily. He's not going to have a top 20 movie in the box office in that year, but he has been able to go his whole career making his work in the way he wants and having a lot of control. He is the writer, he is the director, and he is the creative voice in what he's doing. And so when he has now built a brand on doing it that way, he also is very reliable at turning a profit. So he's very safe. So the studios will leave him alone. He'll go make his $30 million movie. In this case, it's a little more than that. It's $51 million. But he'll go make his mid-budget movie, get a decent return on it. And he didn't have to make a lot of compromises as an artist. And he got to work with people. And time again, people really seem to enjoy working with him. And you can see that in the stories of the cast members as they talk about their enthusiasm for working with him and working on his projects.
It's more than just a feather in the cap. It's an experience that it sounds as if the way that you describe it, when it comes your way, you get a chance to, like you said, not a blockbuster, but you get a chance to be a part of a piece of art.
And they're not all as big as this one. Sometimes they're just kooky and off the wall, but they're always unique. And I think, like you said, it's an opportunity for an actor to get something that can be fresh and different. And he has his own brand of stuff. He does march to a different beat of his own drum, I think.
Well, you brought up that like Woody Allen is playing the Woody Allen character in some of his older stuff, but I don't know if you were about to get to it, but Owen Wilson as this character, it wasn't just that the writing made you excited to follow him, but I really liked this portrayal. I was really afraid that this was going to be that Owen Wilson that just churned out some of these comedies in the late 2000s and early 2010s.
Life Aquatic?
Don't you dare. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the art that Wes Anderson makes. I'm talking about the what was that movie where
Wedding Crashers?
Vince Vaughn went to Google.
Wedding Crashers, yeah.
Hey, there's good stuff out there. But as you said, Crystal, Owen Wilson generally plays Owen Wilson. Yes. And in this, we have Owen Wilson kind of doing his Woody Allen impression. I liked this character and his portrayal.
Yeah, there was a nervousness that Owen Wilson had in this part that I don't often see in his other roles. He was playing this like very unsure, nervous, kind of thinking of your next step before you do it. There was definitely a lot of Woody Allen-esque in his acting, and I think this might be the first time I saw Owen Wilson like actually acting. So I appreciated it.
It is a step outside of his comfort zone as well. You're right. It was interesting. The part was written initially. Gil was supposed to be an East Coast academic, not that different from Paul, but just, kind of in line with that. When they realized they wanted to use Owen Wilson and they were going to use Owen Wilson, Woody, again, writer, director, full control, rewrote things to align more in terms of he had to be a Californian now. What does that mean? The sensibilities of now the parents don't like, so it took on its whole life. So Owen definitely stepped outside his comfort zone to some degree, but Woody also tailored the suit for Owen to wear with success. So the part was shaped also to make sure it fit him very well to what he is, because these play to his strong suits. Because Owen Wilson does a great job of just having a sense of wonder. He looks like he could walk into a room and say like, wow, this place is really cool, and like genuinely mean it. And that's a fun person to go around having this big discovery, epiphany.
So you pair Owen Wilson with a legend like Woody Allen. You pair Owen Wilson with, I think, an artiste in Wes Anderson. But then we are forgetting some of the things that people really, really dig him with. We look at some of the duds, father figures, masterminds. We look at
masterminds.
The Internship, Hall Pass. There was a bit of flooding of Owen Wilson, especially with his friend Vince Vaughn, putting out, I'm going to say, rubbish because it was successful. And so that's where I separate them into the two versions. Which Owen Wilson are we getting? And we got the performer.
I caught a movie on TV. It was Owen Wilson and J-Lo, and this was recent. And she's playing a singer who picks somebody out of the audience to marry. I don't really know the concept, but it's Owen Wilson. And then they try to make this relationship work. It was one of the craziest, horrible movies I've ever seen. So I think that, thank you. I think that Owen Wilson is at the end of that kind of career to just like jump into movies and just be successful. There is something going on. So I don't know. I think you're going to have to be nostalgic about Owen Wilson from the early 2000s because I don't know what he's doing now.
And like I said, I am an apologist, so I like some of the movies that you listed off as the bad ones. So I mean, now I know you hate The Internship, and I might not go with that one as much, but I love Wedding Crashers, and I do enjoy Masterminds, Drill Bit Taylor, and even some of the ones that were panned, like Yumi and Dupree. I just generally tend to like Owen Wilson.
Drill Bit Taylor was panned too. You're just such a comedy freak that you are. It's hard to turn that off. I can't say that you're wrong. I can't say you're wrong. I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, but this is Woody Allen had a sufficient budget to shoot the movie. He had his preferred cast in here. Many were working on different projects, and they kind of moved things around. Wilson's name came up, and I just love that he rewrote it to fit him. I think that's something that you don't see a lot. I think oftentimes somebody will say, I wrote it with that person in mind, but I think that shows a level of care. And to go back in as a writer, the adaptability of a mature person to not, he wrote this thing. So when you're the writer, you oftentimes have a hard time wanting it to change, especially when you're in the director control. You have an enormous amount of control. It needs to be this way. I want this thing. It has to be my way. And the adaptability to that, I think, speaks well to be able to work with people and the people that you have well. Crystal, this movie looks awesome. I mean, we have the Paris during the day and Paris at night. Talk about the visual experience you get on this. This is a visually rich movie as well. I was surprised it didn't get a cinematography candidate on here because I think it's a stylish movie. I think it's fun.
It's absolutely stunning. And the cinematographer, Darius Kanji, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He just has this sense of color and space that everything kind of looks like eye candy. You want to go there. You want to visit it. You don't want to be necessarily with the people that are in the movie, but you want to be where they're at. It's gorgeous. And movies that he's done in the past really show that as well. Even going as far back as The Beach. Obviously, it's a beautiful location, but unless you are able to capture it well, it's not going to show. And that movie was just absolutely gorgeous. And he's also done a lot of music videos too. I mean, this guy's done Jay-Z and Taylor Swift. So they're obviously hiring him because he knows what he's doing.
He had worked also, Darius worked with Woody Allen for another movie once before in 2003 called Anything Else. So it's always fun to see a director go back to a cinematographer when that chemistry is going. I really like the orange tones, the warm tones. Now we've seen this before, even the Impressionists from the era that they're going back and visiting and stuff. We have seen Paris, we've seen Paris displayed in this. It's what you do. It's just what's associated with it. But they brought it to life, and they made it seem so vibrant. The 20s are probably characterized. They're glamorized. The wardrobe is elevated a little bit more than it's 20s on steroids. It's just like when we go back to the 50s or something like in Back to the Future, it's 50s on steroids. Like, it's a little bit of TV media, a little bit of other historical, references coming in there. And they do that. And I'm okay with that because they're not going for total accuracy. They're going because it seems like you've entered the best 1920s ball. And it is fun. I think the point of travel in this, and they time hop twice. I had so much fun with that. I'm not saying I wanted this movie because the script was perfect, but the way they were handling it, directing it, and shooting it, gosh, I just wanted to time travel with this cinematographer and this director some more because they did it so well.
Well, there's also this element that Owen Wilson's going and having these relationships with people that are, they have more money maybe than the average person. You're talking about, a lot of writers and things like that. So they are going to like the nicer clubs and they're going out. They're not necessarily like this working class that aren't going out and partying. These guys are partying every night. I mean, these guys are out there. So there is a different echelon maybe of what you're seeing rather than just the standard 1920s, family in a farmhouse who's like growing crops, like it's so different that you're in Paris. There's a different nightlife. There's a different group of people that you're hanging out with, but that's what we want to see. I mean, that's really the fun part.
That's what we want to see. And that's what the people who hold on to nostalgia want to see. And that's what Gil wants to see. I know that the character who brings it up first is meant to be unlikable. That Michael Sheen plays that very well. But the thing that brings true is he brings up the Golden Age fallacy. And I have listened to other podcast hosts on different types of shows talk about, I think it was John Hodgman was the one who was talking about like nostalgia is bad for you. Is that like going back and thinking about things being better. The people who do say the things like, I was just born in the wrong time, or that they're an old soul. Like you hear these things and people who describe themselves that way. And objectively, there's nothing wrong with romanticizing things, but it's in the way you're describing how it's shot. Whether it's gilded or bronzed, that orange filter you talk about, like going back, there's a reason people still take old timey photos at the resorts. There's a reason that we have this longing for what used to be, and the showing these small intimate rooms where these artists are coming together and having conversations is exactly what any fan of that time would want. I go back to, I think it's such a standout comedic moment when Gil is able to describe to the other three, his fiance and Paul and Carol, about exactly what Pablo Picasso was thinking when he made that portrait or that painting, and he got to learn it because he's in this romanticized version of that happening, and that's cool. And that was certainly, we go back to the pre-ad break, not expected at all to really dive in and be sucked into these little moments. I didn't expect to be drawn into Salvador Dali with his two surrealist friends being like, oh yeah, I totally see what they're saying. It was a great ride.
I'm going to harken back to a movie we covered a long time ago, was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, where they go back and collect, historical figures to write their history book. But this was on purpose. They knew what they were going. So this takes the game and it ups it one more. It takes them in and immerses in there. And I think you both mentioned wisely that this isn't just, you didn't happen across some average farm family back in the 1920s. You're in the upper echelon. You're rubbing noses with greatness and how exciting that must be. That's a piece of what's fun here. I mean, no, we're not literally collecting Joan of Arc, Abe Lincoln, and all these different fun characters.
Socrates.
Going to the mall with them. Yeah, Socrates.
Socrates.
That's a fun movie too, by the way. But this movie gives you that joy that Bill and Ted kind of does too, but it also is getting you. So again, the buffet is wide and large. So you have the Bill and Ted, whatever dish that is that you want at the buffet, the Bill and Ted food's there too. So you can have all this different things, and it's working at all these different levels. Side tangent, I'm going to ask you, Crystal, if you were at midnight in Paris and or wherever, and you're at a bus stop and some bus or some old car is going to come back and pick you up, where's your golden age? Where are you getting taken to and dropped off in the middle of the night to go venture into a time of the past and a nostalgia?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be so corny because it would have been the 1920s. And after watching this movie, I'm going to pick Paris because why not? I think that is one of the reasons why I love this movie. I mean, F. Scott Fitzgerald's my favorite writer. Everybody in this movie of the artist, that's my era, my love. And actually, I was thinking about a quote when you were talking about the nostalgia part and how, Dustin, did you say nostalgia is, what'd you say about that? It's bad.
John Hodgman brings up on his show that nostalgia can hold you back, and that nostalgia is the way he described it is like it's bad for you.
Yeah. So F. Scott Fitzgerald says, "It is sadder to find the past again and find it inadequate to the present than it is to have it elude you and remain forever a harmonious conception of memory." So he's saying it's better to leave it in the past and to have that memory that you can kind of go back to and be like, oh, that was a great time, than to actually physically go back and try to recreate it, because it would never happen. And I think if you're thinking of like modern day, it's like when you go back to like an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend and you think, oh, we had such a great time 15 years ago or in high school, and then you're trying to recreate it and you can't. That's exactly what I think of when I think of this quote.
Or, to think back on like what it was like pre-internet, or to think back what it was like pre-smartphone, to think back what it was like to wait by the phone to see if she's going to call, or to have your parents tell you that like, oh, you got a phone call. Oh, what's the message? Like there are things that like thinking back to that or seeing a movie set in those times can be like, I remember what that was like. But another friend of mine had once told me that like we are living in the most advanced, the most rich, the most exciting time that has ever possibly existed. He would not like the question, when would you go back to? If you could choose where you would go in time, you'd go to the future, because there's going to be untold wonders.
That's awesome. I mean, I think it would be great to, my architecture brain says I would like to go back to either the 50s or maybe the 20s and go to like Berlin and go to like some of the German, see all the expressionist painters and Kandinsky, and be around the people like Klee and Mondrian, and it would be cool to see the people who are radically revolutionizing the world, which is the 20s. It's a little bit of a different, Picasso counts as this world to some degree. So 20s is appealing, the 50s is appealing. And, I also think those ancient times would be fun too. So at the end of the movie, we get a little glimpse of the ancient world. So, to really go back and to see the stuff that you have had no clue on, like what was ancient Egypt really, really like? Of course, you'd probably be like ostracized because you would stand out like stick out like a sore thumb there, and wouldn't be able to speak the language, but it'd be tempting.
I thought it was a keen and smart move to have when they go to the Belle Epoque, and they are interacting with some of the old heads of that time who were saying, the people today have no imagination. It's not like the Renaissance. I thought it was so smart to like this has existed forever. Everybody kind of wishes to harken back to the old days. And I'm so glad you brought up what you said, Crystal, is that like its memory is more precious than reliving it. I would agree.
Again, the music reinforces the fun that we're having here. Crystal, tell us what the music is doing for your experiences and the adventures for Midnight in Paris.
Right at the beginning, there's this composition and it just pulls you in. It's joyful. And then you're looking at this beauty. It's amazing. And then you have the different older songs from the 20s in there as well. I don't think you can get a better one. I think it's one of the best soundtracks ever existing. I love it. I mean, I also like Saturday Night Fever, so I mean, I can do 70s as well. I'm just saying, you know. I love this one.
Yeah. Dustin, how about you? How do you feel about the music that we have here?
All right. It's not going to be like unpopular, but I think that this soundtrack was it added to the beauty, like overall. Absolutely, it did. Our opening sequence of beautiful pictures of Paris uh, is 3.5 minutes long of that song, and I thought it. Remember, I'm coming in with no experience with this movie, and I thought this is long, and I like that sort of incidental music of, hey, you know you're in Paris after 45 seconds. And after a minute and a half, okay, I know I'm here. After 2 minutes, like, I know I'm here. Is this a Woody Allen movie? Is this a choice to have this be this long? Oh, yeah, I know I'm here. And we have that several more times throughout the movie. And I think it was comfort. Like, it was comforting. I suppose maybe it's because I'm used to things a little more modern. I was maybe expecting something more risky, something not so comforting. But that's me describing a movie that this isn't. That's me thinking of something else. I enjoyed this soundtrack of the times that we're in most frequently, which is the present and the 1920s. However, I think the standout is when they go back to the 1890s, when Gil and Adriana go back. The horse-drawn carriage pulls up, and now we have even more mystery. What's going to happen here? And what's playing in that first like dance hall they go into when everyone's in the fancy dress is Offenbach, and I had to look up the name of the song, but it's Barcarolle from the Tales of Hoffmann, and that is such a beautiful song, and it impacts my favorite shot of the movie. But that song is very heavily featured in Life is Beautiful. La Vie is Belle, Roberto Benigni's like masterpiece, Life is Beautiful. That song is in that, and that song like nearly brings a tear to my eye. So that beautiful shot with that song, you know that there's a master at work.
The "Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love" has been used so many times before, but somehow it took on an especially strong rendition here. Again, I thought that one was a standout moment. Again, we've seen it in other movies. We even saw it in Tank Girl, by the way.
And now I'll have to scramble to come up with a different hidden gem, because I was going to bring up the Tank Girl version of that song, Russell.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
Well, I love that we have that really long intro. It slows you down wherever you're at. You're slowing down. I love that. But also, I think what Woody Allen is saying is that Paris is a person in this movie. Like, it is a character. And so he's giving it's almost like the first time you see Jill Pender, you're like, okay, that's a character. This is part of it. He's saying that this is my love story to Paris, this is my love story to Italy, and I can do whatever I want because I'm Woody Allen.
Woody's often setting his movies in the New York setting. He is a very New York dude. When he shoots his own city, you will often get the average, the typical. Annie Hall's not gorgeous, beautiful Manhattan scenes and stuff like that. It is not Sinatra singing New York, New York and stuff like that. It is not, the romantic version of New York so much. We covered we covered a movie earlier, Dustin, Take the Money and Run. That is not a glamorous depiction. Very funny movie, but I mean, that's not a glamorous setting and depiction. Here he comes to Paris as an outsider. He has come in for what the world thinks of, like you said, Rome, London, Paris. He has come for what we as tourists see. So I think he as an outsider is portraying Paris in a very romantic way. It's a conscious move. He doesn't shoot New York in quite as romantic of a way, even though New York absolutely is a magical movie. We've seen it depicted in several movies in a magical way. I mean, I remember we covered Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Really does a lot to, it's like a nice travelogue of New York. I mean, it makes a lot of the big stops along the way, and it makes it seem very charming and magical. maybe more so from a child's perspective, but it makes New York seem like a very lively place. Here, he's choosing that Paris. Another Leah Seydoux movie that we covered was Blue is the Warmest Color. We noted that in that movie that they were in France and it seemed a lot more average. It seemed European, but it wasn't. This was not the Champs-Élysées. This wasn't the Arc de Triomphe. This wasn't and they aren't necessarily hitting all those landmarks per se. They do in the beginning travelogue, but this is a very nice version of Paris, like you said. And I think that that's a conscious motion for this script. And that's why you mentioned this city, the setting is critical to what he's doing. And it is a love letter to Paris, and it shows through. And he, as an outsider, is, engaging with Paris in that way, in a way that he doesn't necessarily engage with his own city. So I think that's I'm glad you brought that up. What do you guys say we hand out some awards?
I'm ready.
All right. Now, Crystal, you love this movie. Who is the MVP of Midnight in Paris?
I have to give it to Owen Wilson. Obviously, the movie is kind of circling around him. So he is a very important person in here. So I'm going to have to give it to him.
Owen Wilson. All right. Living the dream. Loving it. Great.
That might never happen again, but I'm giving it to Owen Wilson.
Dustin, how about you?
All right, for kind of a curveball, I'm going Rachel McAdams. I described it a little bit earlier. She does play this version of this type of person that kind of makes you sick. Like, I don't want to be around this person. It's so flagrantly written for her to say the things that she says, for her to put attention on Paul, for her to completely not be supportive of who Gil is, that because of her performance, I believe it really drives us into whatever this magic jump is, and Gil's character too. And so it's almost as if like a great antagonist that like draws like a hero out. That's what I'm getting from her.
I thought Inez was at her most ugly when her earrings went missing. Gil was the one who took them, and she came to the conclusion, it's the help. I knew it was them. I could tell she had a little look on her face and like the disgust of talking down to somebody who's there to help you out. And she's inherently, we know as a viewer, very wrong. So like she's just digging her emotional hole deeper and deeper with you, the viewer, on this one. And again, it's funny. It's all on purpose. We all know what's going on. But again, like you're right, we love to hate Inez. We don't feel bad at all that he's just, quickly says, I don't want to get married to you anymore. And it's a matter of fact, oh yeah, and I've been cheating on you. And like he's like, yeah. It's like,
Sure.
I mean, it's the least caustic, I had him paid to be followed. Like all of these like things would have been big shoes to drop normally, and none of it's there because it didn't work, and we all should have known it. So I love your pick there. I also have to go with Woody Allen though. I do, because he wrote it, he directed it. It's his creation. It's like a de facto kind of thing of like, he's the one who made it all happen. I do give a nod to Owen Wilson because Woody Allen writes so much from himself, and he is himself in these movies. So often we get a lot of who Woody is and his characters and coming through that anxious nature. Again, Owen Wilson was a really good vehicle for the character that Woody Allen is. And maybe it's just because I hadn't seen that presented that way, but I really liked it. I really liked seeing Owen Wilson. I kind of wish he'd do more Woody Allen movies. I wish they would have hit, I'm not saying they need to go to the Tim Burton, Johnny Depp town, where Burton seemingly vicariously living through Johnny Depp, but it worked really well. I could have done this again, this combo. Best supporting, Crystal.
I'm going to have to go with Marion Cotillard. She is mysterious and beautiful and hopeful as Adriana. I think when she comes onto the screen, there's nothing else you can look at. She is such an interesting actress. I love her. And I know that Woody Allen also handpicked her as well.
She is so good. And I think there's something lovely about how it might have just been like the sign of the times. We are, and not everybody, but I think in general, people, it's easy to be reserved. It's easy to not be outgoing. It's easy to be kind of in your phone. And when you think back of times long past, you really feel like if she's talking to you, she's interested in you. And Gil feels that way too. Like, whoa, this person's interested in me, and this, this beautiful woman. And so I thought her performance was great. I am going with a very short amount of screen time as a supporting actor, but it's Corey Stoll as Hemingway. I thought he also stole his scenes too, and it's the line delivery. I wouldn't know about his characterizations, about how accurate they might be, or the way that he speaks, but the way that it's shown in this movie is captivating. And I thought each time you had him, it was, you had to listen, and so I thought that was pretty cool.
He was good. My best supporting, I'm going to go Kurt Fuller, John the dad of
The dad.
Inez. He's
so good.
funny. Like, he has these facial depictions, like fish out of water, doesn't belong here, doesn't appreciate what he's in, even though he's in some pretty awesome things. He has the money to do Paris right, and he's enjoying himself. The clash that he has between, Owen's this Californian Democratic guy, and he's this, Republican kind of guy, and they are antagonizing each other. They're fun to watch. We don't get a whole lot of the family moments together, but there's a good family tension here that I really like. So Kurt Fuller. Hidden Gem.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, how long were they taking a vacation for? Like, at least a month, right?
Yeah, for real.
Like, this is a very long vacation, and it wasn't even the end of it. We don't even know. Like, was this a 3-month tour? I don't know. It was really interesting.
There is something that there is something where I occasionally will get tired of, or it will put me off whenever a movie or a TV show is like focused on extravagant wealth. That's something that is sometimes tough for me to see. But one of the greatest things I learned 15 years ago was the idea that like human stories of emotion and of like how you handle conflicts and stuff like that are true whether you have all the money or none of the money. And it's just easier with a beautiful movie in Paris if you have all of the money. So who knows? Maybe the entire vacation is expensed by the dad's company. That's why they're not worried about paying for anything. And we also are given, just all you need is oh yeah, I write movies. They're hack jobs, but I write them and I get hired. But he's pursuing that artistic part. So yeah, it's a crazy long vacation, but it just means more Paris for us to enjoy.
Hidden Gem, Crystal.
Michael Sheen, oh my gosh, he is amazing in this movie. I especially like when he's talking to his wife. So he plays Paul. He's talking to his wife, Carol, and she'll say a word and he will correct her pronunciation under his breath every time. So she says Sorbonne, and then he'll like correct her, or Versailles, and he'll correct her. And it's just so incredibly annoying as a woman to like watch that. And she doesn't like push back at all. She's like, oh, okay. How do you, what? She's doing that with him. I absolutely, every time he's on screen, I want to hate him so much. And that makes me love him.
Yeah.
So it's a love.
Absolutely. Dustin, how about you? Hidden Gem.
I had one chosen, and then I was thinking about giving it to Kurt Fuller, but you gave him his flowers. So I had to go with option C, which is Adrian Brody as Salvador Dali and his rhinoceros fixation. This movie isn't silly, and that's okay. But when you get something that is just a bit wacky, a little off kilter, I thought that's every movie needs a little something like that.
That's Woody Allen. You gotta go full silly sometimes. So for sure. Let's go. My hidden gem is Carla Bruni. She is the museum guide, and she is the wife of President Sarkozy at the time. She's the first lady when this was filmed of France. So she's kind of a big political figure in there. She's also beautiful and does her own music as well. So there was a version of this, like in the deleted scenes and such, where she is the woman that he ends up saying like, hey, you want to go get some coffee? And those two end up walking off the set together. They opted to go with the Lea Seydoux route. But I kind of felt like I was like, hey, that's also a pretty good ending too. I mean,
They filmed it to where either would work.
Exactly.
And who wouldn't want to walk off with Owen Wilson?
Yeah. Recast. If you had to recast somebody in their place, Crystal, we're gonna make you do it. Who's it gonna be?
I put none, and that's because if there's not a problem, you shouldn't try to fix it.
Oh, well,
that's what I think.
You're allowed.
Okay, fine.
You're allowed to take the cheap route and go deeper in the cast. You can go.
I'll take Adrian Brody out, and I'll put Dustin Champion in. How about that?
Yeah,
there you go. Dustin Champion's Dolly.
Yeah, right. I'll be the.
How gorgeous was that? See, perfect.
It's not the first time a retro movie roundtable host has been recasted into a movie. So there you go. There have been I think there was a time where I put a house plant in instead of you. Else, so.
That's right. I guess we can't say who it is. It would spoil that episode. That was rough. Go. And you are going into the pit, Russell.
Dustin did not like my recasting of a long line of people. Anyway, Dustin, how would you recast in this movie?
Nina Arianda plays Carol, who is Paul's wife, and does nothing to help anything. She's, in fact, you would almost want there to be tension there, but there isn't. So I thought we could maybe use a little more oomph. So I went with Elizabeth Debicki. She plays our villainess in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And it's recency bias. I just saw her 2 months ago. But that's one of those, like, I could use a little bite from that character, and that character seemed tame to me.
All right. I'm coming after Inez's mom. So instead of Mimi Kennedy, there's nothing wrong. She's thoroughly dislikable, but I thought, what if we amped it up and went with Christine Baranski? So you might know her from The Grinch or from Mamma Mia. I mean, she has this, even her face just kind of do this role well. She gets into character. She's not actually like this off screen, but she would do really well with Inez's mom, I think. I could see her doing cheap is cheap. Like,
Yeah. No doubt.
Best shot, Crystal.
The beginning scene where they're walking and it looks like they're in a Monet painting, to me, can't beat it.
All right. Dustin, how about you?
I had mentioned it earlier that I really like how close they are, and the close-in shot of their first dance during the Belle Epoque era of the movie. But I think Crystal's just objectively right. That is an unbeatable shot at the beginning. So I'm going to join her side. You're talking about
where he meets her on the bridge and they're in a lily pond behind them?
Yeah, it literally looks like it's a painting. I don't know how they got that shot, if they had to like put some lily ponds on the water. And it's stunning.
That was mine too, so you guys stole my thunder.
You can go 3 for 3.
I'm going to say the closing with them walking away in the rain is pretty good too. So
well, then you got good bookends.
Yeah. Best scene, Crystal.
The first time Gil goes to the 20s and he meets the Fitzgeralds and he's trying to figure out what is going on. I love that scene. I love the depiction of Zelda Fitzgerald. He's right when he says later on, like, she's exactly what you would expect her to be. That's how I would hope that she would have been if I would have met her. So I love that scene.
Love it. Dustin, how about you? Best scene.
Really putting Paul in his place when he's discussing Picasso with like the rest of the insufferable crew in the museum was such a satisfying payoff. And they can't know how he's right, but it's even shot well, where he kind of is just looking at the camera like, yeah, I'm right about this. When we talk about comedies, sometimes it's like big punches or big grand slams. That one was just like knocked out of the
mic drop. Yeah. I like that too. Best scene for me has got to be when Gil steals Inez's earrings, and with the intention of giving them to Adriana, but Inez and her parents return in the hotel just the wrong time when they're not supposed to be there. He's got the gift in his hand. He doesn't realize it. And she even says, "What's that in your hand? Is that a gift?" And he has to do this like, yeah, but I don't want to give it to you now kind of thing. Yeah. The earrings are missing, and he comes back and they're on the bathroom counter. I'm quite certain I didn't put him in there. I don't know what it was. You must have put him in there. I mean,
When I was younger, I thought, oh my gosh, like no guy would ever do that. That's not, that's so like what? And now that I'm older, oh yeah, a lot of guys would do that. Totally. I could totally see this happening. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's see here. It's not quite like that, but one time my wife and I went on a date just to like, we were back home in my hometown, Charleston, for summer, like in West Virginia. Museum admissions were pretty low to get into the museum we happened to be going to. I did not take my wallet, and I didn't want to be the guy who's like, you pay for the date kind of thing. So I was like, I ran back to the car thinking I left my wallet in the car. I did not leave it there. I'm sitting there emptying out my coins out of my cash tray for all the tools and stuff like that. I actually came up pretty close because I did have a lot of quarters in there. I was like, this is one very worthy ashtray. This is the best ashtray ever. I was still a little bit short. And on the way back in, I came up to enough people. I was just like, hey, I'm looking for a meter because it was parallel park. That was not an absurd thing. It's like, can I have a quarter? And I got a quarter from about 4 more people to get my last dollar. I went in there and I blew every last quarter, dime, nickel, and stuff on the counter. I looked like, here's my change for my day.
I think I would have rather you just say, I forgot my wallet and have me pay than for you to spend and like an entire hour to go through and get every piece of change for like, I'll pay for it this time.
Probably would have been okay, but I didn't do that. So
all's well that ends well, I guess, right?
Yeah, you're married now, so maybe you wouldn't have been if she didn't see that tenacity in you.
Well, anyway, best wardrobe or makeup moment, Crystal.
All the 1920s costumes are absolutely fabulous. They are above 1 to 10. They are just above whatever scale that you could be on. But also because I like to see the little things that I don't even know if I'm seeing something, but I love at the very end where Inez and Gil are breaking up and her parents come in. They're all going to take they're all going to go swimming and they're all in the white bathrobe. Mm-hmm. And it just visually, you could see you have this side and that side, and they are opposing. You got her whole family and her in this white robe, and he's not in it, and he is gone. And I love that visual of like, he doesn't belong here, and now he knows.
All right. Dustin, best wardrobe or makeup moment?
The very first time you see Marion Cotillard is when she's got like a headband on, and it does remind you of a costume. Of a cheap costume, unfortunately. But I think every other 20s costume is fantastic. But I think the success, one of the things I find was a success was cigarette holders always look comical. But in her hands, it seemed natural. And that was a success.
I did like Hemingway's disheveled, kind of like unbuttoned, like, kind of like I'm hot. And like, you just like anybody ready to fight kind of thing. I did like that. But Marion Cotillard was intentionally on display with her, and I am going to go with the one that you mentioned. It is ultra 1920s. It is a little shtick, but it is the fantasy world we're into, and it's more glam than the 20s actually were, and that's okay. So I'm with you, Dustin, on this one. Change one thing. We're going to make you do this too, Crystal. Change one thing about this movie, and only one.
I actually think there needed to be more of Michael Sheen. I wanted some type of confrontation between Michael Sheen and Gil, or some type of resolution, or that Michael Sheen gets stuck in a horrible time period, right? So we just see like a snap of like, he goes into a coffee shop, but actually, he's going to jail, something like that. And it doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe just like a few hours. I would love that.
That's exactly what I wrote. I said, I need something bad to happen to Paul. I don't know what, but I just need something.
Not permanent, just something that kind of makes you go, ha, that's what you got. We got the 1920s, and you're going to have a really bad day.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, I had imagined just spilling coffee on his own lap or something, like where he has a moment where he looks goofy, but I'm now imagining him in the stockades in the Spanish Inquisition at the end of the movie. That's pretty good too. So
he deserves that.
Dustin, how about you? What do you think here? Change one thing.
I think we mentioned earlier that early on in the movie, it is described to you, it is shown to you the kind of people these people are, and that's lovely and well done. But I think, we described it as they don't think the audience is stupid. Like, you know what's going on. But when they jump back to the belly pock and then they start talking about how she wants to stay, that I think lingers for maybe 3 minutes about like the realization that, oh, she wants to stay here. She's not happy with the 20s. And I just thought that could have been done more subtly for how good the rest of this was done. That one was, oh, you really hit me over the head with this. And it's not like I'm sitting on the couch going like, you're better than this, Woody Allen. But I noticed it the same way that I noticed that like extremely long opening sequence was. It was a very small question mark in an otherwise very good movie.
Nice. Now, best quote, Crystal.
There are so many good quotes, but I went with, "That's the problem with writers. You are so full of words."
That's good. Yeah. Dustin, how about you? What's your best quote?
All cowardice comes from not loving or not loving well, which is the same thing. And when the man who is brave and true looks death squarely in the face like some rhino hunters I know, or Belmonte, who is truly brave, it is because they love with sufficient passion to push death out of their minds until it returns, as it does to all men. And then you must make really good love again.
I'm going to have to switch, Dustin. You can now be Hemingway. That's fine.
I feel like I'm getting complimented this time.
You've been upgraded from Dali.
All right.
I like the quote. Adriana says, "I can never decide whether Paris is more beautiful in the day or the night." And I love when Gil goes, "No, you can't. You can't pick one. I mean, I can give you a checkmate argument for either side. You know, sometimes I think anyone is ever going to come up with a book or a painting or a symphony or a sculpture. It can't compete with a great city. You can't, because you look around on every street, every boulevard. Its own special art form. And when you think of that in the cold, violet, meaningless universe that Paris exists, there are these lights. I mean, come on. There's nothing happening in Jupiter or Neptune, but far away from space, you can see these lights and these cafes, people drinking and singing. For all we know, Paris is the hottest spot in the whole universe. I love how he's talking about the city, and I feel that way too. When I go somewhere, I like to see the buildings, I like to see the urban places, I like to see the streets, I like to eat the food. And it's not necessarily any one individual thing that you're going to do. It's the city as a whole, that living organism of the city that is so fun. And I love how he's talking about, I feel that way. My favorite trips and stuff are moments of discovery in cities. And it's, I love that. I really relate to that. And again, Owen Wilson delivers it with such wonder and awe. So
yeah,
we all had long quote. Sorry for the length of it, but well said. So I did like when Gertrude Stein also said, "We all fear death and question our place in the universe. That's the artist's job, not to succumb to despair, but to find an antidote for the emptiness of existence." I like that too.
So deep. It's just so deep. Yes.
Kathy Bates is awesome. All right. We've come full circle. And on a scale of 5 stars, half-star intervals, this is the big moment. Crystal, what are you going to give this top 3 movie for you?
I think I have to give it a 5. You can pick apart any movie. Any movie you can pick apart, but you have to be able to give out a 5 when it's deserved. This is a 5.
Love it. I love it. Dustin, how about you? What are you going to give this movie?
We love a good 5-star rating. I'm giving this a 4. I enjoyed it a lot. I was brand new to it, being taken along for this ride right away, and to see what I was in for. I think upon recollection, I already mentioned it before that I was almost trying to criticize a movie that this wasn't trying to be. I almost wanted this to be more mysterious, or and then potentially like more sci-fi. But that's not what I wanted out of this movie. The movies like that exist, where like, what's the reason for the time jump? You never have it answered. Good. You shouldn't try to answer it. That's the best thing about it. So first, as I was watching, I was like, this is pleasant 3.5. And I'm like, this is better than pleasant. This is a 4. And Russell, how many minutes is this movie? I'll tell you, buddy, it's 94 minutes. 90-minute movie.
that's
You
right
know
up
I'm
your
going to
alley.
give it a good ranking.
A
So,
tight 90, yes.
well done. That's a tight 90.
That's all right. All right. Well, then I'm going to come right down between you guys. I'm going to go with a 4.5 on this one. I really love this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it has the potential. Sometimes all it is time and number of viewings to go from that 4.5 into the 5 realm. Sometimes it's just sharing it with the right people and having the right conversations enough times and having the nostalgia. This is the key word for tonight, build up for you. I love this movie. There's room for it to grow. I'm at a 4.5. It's amazingly well crafted. Great soundtrack, great cast. There's everything that's really working on all cylinders. It's hard to knock it. So 4.5 for me. Dustin, will you help me pick a movie for next week?
I've got options for you, pal. Let's go on a crusade. Next week, we revisit one of these movies that takes place in the Crusades. Option number 1, Saladin from 1963. After Saladin's victory over the King of Jerusalem, a peace treaty is signed between them. But the commander of the Crusader army, Renaud de Chatillon, slaughters a group of pilgrims going to Mecca. Saladin then decides to take revenge. Option number 2 from 2005, Kingdom of Heaven. Balian of Ibelin travels to Jerusalem during the Crusades of the 12th century, and there he finds himself as a defender of the city and its people. Or option number 3 from 1957, The Seventh Seal. A knight returning to Sweden after the Crusades seeks answers about life, death, and the existence of God as he plays chess against the Grim Reaper during the Black Plague. What's it gonna be?
I'm going to say option number 2, and let me put a big disclaimer out there for anybody listening. It is worth the time investment. Check out the director's cut of this movie that we're going to cover next week with Kingdom of Heaven. It is longer, but the director disowned his own movie upon its theatrical release. This movie was cut down 50 minutes, so please do yourself a favor. It got a little bit of a hard time in the reviews. Go back and watch the Ridley Scott cut on this one. It is so much better. Orlando Bloom, Liam Neeson, Ava Green.
Sounds like we got Edward a fan. Norton,
Kingdom. Yeah, this is a good one. I can't wait. So we're going to do that next week. So Dustin, that is not a tight 90. That might be doubling it, but I mean, it's worth it. I'll say that.
Okay. All right. For you, Russell.
All right, Crystal, thank you so much. This has been a blast. We loved having you on from the best coast, the West Coast. Pretty good coast, if not second best. I don't know, but we loved having you on here. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for bringing Midnight to Paris to us. So much fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Like us on Instagram and Twitter at @movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. So we invite you to support our show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. All contributions are much appreciated and will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Dustin.
You can't imagine how much I feel like making love to you, but I'll never tell anyone, especially not you. They'd have to torture me to make me say that I want to make love to you, not just once, but over and over again. But I'll never tell you that. I'd have to be crazy to tell you. I'd even make love to you now, right here, for the rest of my life.